okay? And you really just go, wow, what a difference. Really, what a difference time has made. And God's good. He's really good. You look at everything in perspective and just realize how important it is we do what we do. So just keep praying for people. Any special prayer requests today? Brother Ed.
This afternoon, Candy and I, we went to Dollar General. We get a few things for my great aunt, and it was basically junk food because she grew up in that area.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to get across is that there's several loved ones in nursing homes. Family members can't go see them. They can't bring them the stuff that they can't get in the nursing home, such as like she got her full of popcorn and stuff, cookies. Simply because it's what she likes. But there's other people that's in there that their loved ones can't come in because they're not letting them in.
That's right.
To be able to bring them that stuff. So I guess we keep them in our thoughts and prayers that that they would get through this without any overriding circumstance.
That's right. Yeah, nursing homes really right now, and obviously they're just pretty much shut down for any visitors, and even hospitals wise are going through that right now also. Yeah, so pray for the families as a whole. Amen. Anybody else? Continue to pray for Tim Hosey's brother. He and his wife, and they were exposed in Virginia, and they've not been tested, but they're not feeling well. So pray for Tim's brother. Pray for our church, church family that we keep well here. We're blessed so far, and we're just confident of that. Just keep doing what he's doing, and he'll take care of us. We still need to be smart and healthy, but do the best that we can. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
I don't know how to word it. I'll probably stumble a lot and everything, but pray for the churches. I mean, I went past, their doors are closed.
Yes, ma'am.
They're just closed. What's going on? Why is this being allowed to happen like this? And I don't understand why churches are shutting their doors.
That's a very
I can't figure it out.
That's a very valid question. The vast majority of the churches have closed. And they're concerned of the spread of coronavirus. Today I was sharing it with mobile people today. The media feeds fear. And not that it isn't valid. The virus is valid. But we also need to be healthy. We need to be smart. Church is a part of being healthy. When you're looking at not only spiritually but mentally. And there's much to be said when we say God is hope. He is hope. And obviously some churches have a lot of significant elderly and with suppressed immune systems and other outlying areas. Should they stay home? Probably so. Two of the pastors I spoke to this week, one came here Thursday, talked to the other one on Friday, and of like-minded faith, and they were saying we're open. And we worked our way through it, not without phone calls, with folks who are concerned that we're open, and inside church, outside the church. And I just said to them just this way: did you go to Walmart this week? We're way cleaner than Walmart. You will be less chance exposed here than Walmart. And when nuts and bolts come through to it, we're just going to do the best we can to share Jesus. And unless we're physically directed otherwise, and right now we're able to be open legally, and we're going to do that. If somebody feels unsafe, stay home. Absolutely, no foul there. By all means, stay home. That's why we're able to be online and so forth, and be that blessing. But it's a concern. But again, media feeds fear, and so we just need to be mindful. We need to be really prayerful. So, anything else? Let's open in prayer. Lord, thank you for tonight. Thank you for today. Lord, we were able to open, share your word. Now, undoubtedly, Lord, your word went unvoid. Folks listened. Folks streamed in. Folks heard. Even in the littlest of things. You know, we had one family that was having a baby in surgery, was able to stream in with us this morning. Lord, thank you for allowing us to be that blessing. Lord, as we live in a special time, Lord, we need to be healthy, we need to be safe. But Lord, you are the master physician. You can take care of many things, as I alluded to this morning in morning's message, Lord, we just are confident of this. You are still on the throne. You'll take care of it in your time. Just keep us healthy. In your holy, most precious name we pray. Amen. If you have your Bibles this morning, we're going to be in the book of Psalms. Two things. Somebody asked, where do you turn to? Quickly, for reference. Depending on who they are, what they're reading. Often I'll refer to John and Romans. If they're looking for hope and peace and comfort, wisdom, I send them Psalms. We're going to be in Psalm 48th chapter this morning, or this evening. And we look and realize everybody's heard the phrase, God is love. But tonight we're looking at it a little bit different. In Psalm the 48th chapter, and then the first verse. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, in the mountain of his holiness. Beautiful for the situation, the joy of the whole earth, in Mount Zion, in the sides of the north, in the city of the great king. God is known in her palaces for refuge. When we look at this text this evening, we just realize we're in a sanctuary. Sanctuary is for safety. Sanctuary is for us to come closer. And we realize that throughout life, things have ultimately changed. And you think of this movie. How many of you have ever seen the movie Fiddler on a Roof? A couple. Good. You look at this poor dairy farmer. And this poor dairy farmer, that he valued his tradition of his people much. And in rapidly changing times, he finds himself stretched out. And he was looking for an ultimate match for his daughter. And the story continues to go on with traditional, looking at finding a financially stable partner within their ancient faith for his kids. And so he's going through and ended up, the bottom line is, the people that he was trying to line up with his kids, they fell in love with somebody else. Well, he himself, as an adult, in the middle of all this turmoil, finds himself insecure in his part that he and his wife match was made by their parents. And so after 25 years of marriage, he turns to his wife and asks her, do you love me? And even though they never spoke about their feelings with each other, she gives an indirect answer of offering of evidences. And she just said this: I've washed your clothes, I've cooked your meals, I've cleaned your house, and I've starved with you. The loyalty that I've shown is enough to show my love for you. And so it leads to the question tonight: does God love us? And we just have to look at the evidences of God's love. In the 48th Psalm, and you look at it, even including Psalm 46, it is categorized as Zion songs. It celebrates the glory of Mount Zion on a hill which is the temple where Jerusalem stood. And you look at God's kingship and having written against the backdrop of competing gods. Nation after nation after nation, when they would go to war with their people and their God. They all had many nationalisms and false religions. In biblical times, it went through that each nation thought to have a dominant deity that was responsible for protecting his people. And when nations went to war, they're God's war as well. And even Exodus 12:12, we see this where God preparing Israel for the 10th and most devastating plague. And it says this, "For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord." And so we see in this song that God is celebrating of Israel's king, and who chose to rest in his presence in Jerusalem. And we look at many of the pagan deities that are out there. God's glorifying in Zion with his greatness. Look at verse 1, Psalm 48, chapter 1st verse. "Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, the mountain of his holiness." When King David set out to unify the tribes of Israel, he strategically chose Jerusalem to be his hometown. And you look at this capital, it's centrally located between the upper and lower tribes. And you're looking, it's a huge stronghold, and it wasn't associated with any specific region. It was a walled city set up on a mountain, and it was a perfect spot in which to reign. But the psalm doesn't open with the description of the height of the walls and the strength or the numbers of our armies. Instead, it says this, God's greatness. Tonight we're looking at a pandemic across the world. I was watching the news back in my study just a little while ago. All that was on there was coronavirus pandemic response, coronavirus pandemic. And you're looking through and you know, God is still greatness, and God is still holiness. And even when Jerusalem was referred to as the city of David more than 36 times in the Old Testament, you know, and you look through, God is still greatness. No matter what pandemic we're faced with or whatever we're going to call it, God is still good. He's still on the throne. Look at verse 2. "Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth, and Mount Zion on the sides of the north, and the city of the great King." So they've established the emphasis on Yahweh. The psalmist briefly diverts its attention to Mount Zion. And the translators made this a difficult choice, but the Hebrew word that means north is zaphon. It's a word that's untranslated in Joshua 13:27, but it's a specific place rather than a compass direction. And the specific place is intended to make reference to this location where pagan deity is imagined to dwell. But we know that the fact that when God's involved, the God of Mount Zion is superior because he is the one true God. Look at verse 3. "God is known in our palaces for refuge." You know, so now we pull this attention back to God. As we went from God to location and back to God, the designation of God as Israel's refuge continues the thought from the earlier Zion song in Psalm 46:1. But when we see God as our refuge, no matter what's going on, no matter where we're at, where we're located, how bad things may be, we still need to turn to God as a perfect palace for refuge. Us here tonight. And we look at God. God will be the refuge as long as we don't forget him. The psalmist seemed to be creating an analogy that the word translated refuge is also the Hebrew word for physical material defenses. And we're looking for antivirus medicines and trying to figure out what's going on. And as scientists are working hard and working in viral medicine, you know, we've got to remember that we still have a God that is a refuge. And until that time that we're called home, we need to be sharing Jesus. Because there's many folks who don't realize that God is a refuge. Look at Psalm 48, 9th verse. "We have thought of the loving kindness, O God, in the midst of thy temple." This is the only occurrence of the word temple in Zion songs. Although there's an alternative designation of a house that occurs several times. But up till now, our imagination has been directed to the geography and the defenses of Jerusalem. We're looking at a God that is on top of all things. And when King Solomon prayed for the prayer of dedication of this newly built temple, he was aware that even though God chose to make that temple his meeting place in Israel, God was in no way constrained to the structure. We remember that even though Israel and Jerusalem is a chosen place for God, the Israelites are God's chosen people. The Jewish people were there. In Christendom, for us, from the moment that we've accepted Christ as our Lord and Savior, we too become His people. And with that, we have God the protector. And we just got to realize that there is no person or no false deity that is greater than God. There's no war that He can't win. There's no disease that He can't solve. There's no famine on earth that He can't take care of. There's no stock market collapses that He can't fix. And we look and realize the importance. You know, I found myself earlier online Googling. You know what I ended up Googling? Toilet paper. Your toilet paper. Who would have ever thought people would be so concerned about toilet paper? No. Actually, I did. Amazon has toilet paper right now on sale, but it's made in China. And I'm going, oh, I can't believe I just Googled toilet paper. And you realize that when things get that bad, we come to this word that we look at God's loving kindness. And the reason why I had somebody today say, hey, do you know where to get toilet paper? I'm like, well, I have no idea. And I said, try calling the store, see when they're going to deliver. And I said, because I don't know. I said, to my knowledge, you can't get it online. That's what I heard, and I was right. But when you look at God Almighty, the Hebrew translation that we find in the Old Testament for loving kindness, you know, it occurred 130 times. And you look at this mercy that is translated through loving kindness. This is God's loving kindness, God's mercy on us. And you look at a country and you think, as the United States of America, that we should know better. Going back into biblical times, kings would enter into treaties with their subjects, and these treaties outline relationships between two parties. But it's amazing that God has blessed the United States of America. He gave us forefathers that penned the Constitution of the United States, the preamble. He's penned the bylaws of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And there is no doubt that you can see God the entire way through those articles. And yet today we have a country to turn from. And not that I'm saying the pandemic is a result of it. I'm just saying that when we look at God's loving kindness, you know, we see primarily King Yahweh's fierce and unwavering loyalty to His people. As people meditate on God's track record of their King, we've got to realize that our King formed our country. He blessed us with His country. He continued to maintain our country. In world wars, the United States of America was the country. Today, in 2020, people still look at us as a great nation. Why? Because we're a Christian nation that everybody wants to change. And you've got folks from third world country want to come and celebrate for independence and freedom. And you know what the independence and freedom we result comes from? The independence and freedom that God has given us through His Son Jesus. Everything else fell in place. And you're looking at loving kindness, and you go in, God had provided for the Israelites throughout their history. He's provided through the United States throughout our history. And you look and realize that what God has done. Yeah, our Heavenly Father knows that we need to hear from Him. And His love compelled to us through His Son is just the simpleness of that. These words are like love letters to us. We should reverence them. We should look at them. We should hang on to them. I love looking through history. You hear of times that soldiers in foreign fields and foreign theaters had wrote letters faithfully to their loved ones back home. And all of a sudden they find military at their front door making an announcement that their loved one had perished in combat. And weeks later, the grieving and process because their son or their husband had not come home and was lost in foreign theater. And weeks later, a box shows up with dozens of handwritten love letters. Do you think that family cherished those love letters? Guaranteed they hung on to them for generations to look at. Here's a love letter. And it starts with John 3:16, for God so loved the world. And we realize that even in verse 10, it's a text that we're looking at in Psalm 48th chapter. According to thy name, O God, so is thy praise unto the ends of the earth. The psalmist returns back to the predominant thing. Yahweh's role is there. And we're looking at God's praises don't end at Israel's border. And it doesn't stop at his chosen people. It is with his family. His faithfulness extends across the globe. Look at the second part of verse 10. The right hand is full of righteousness. And interestingly enough, God's might is not mentioned as a proof of a singular existence. Instead, it's a proof of superiority over the so-called gods with a small g. It's depicted in the words, in just a simple word, his righteousness. This is a straightforward concept. It means that God always does the right thing. We'll get in verse 10. Verse 11. Let Mount Zion rejoice. Let the daughters of Judah be glad because of thy judgments. Now we have another rarity is righteousness in Psalm 48:10. You know, looking at Zion's songs, they're paired with concepts of rejoice and be glad. So we live in a country that we're blessed with. So we need to rejoice and we need to be glad in it. Why? Because we can openly praise, celebrate, share our risen Savior. He's blessed us beyond what blessing could ever imagine. Verse 12. Walk about Zion and go round about her, tell the towers thereof. After being explicit that the source of Jerusalem's security doesn't lie in her defenses. United States of America, being explicit, the source of security doesn't lie within our medical field. It doesn't lie within our military. It doesn't lie within our first responders. It lies within God Almighty. Ultimately, He's the one that's protecting us and providing for us. The fall of Jericho affirmed God's power is greater than brick and mortar protection. Well, last week when He declared that the Canadian border was closed, and I'm going, the Canadian border, how many of you ever heard the Canadian border was closed in your life? And then you go, the Canadian border, how does that happen? And you look through, and the Mexican border is supposed to have been closed for years, and to some extent travel was able to go back and forth, but to do a halt. How did we protect that? And then the psalmist seems to acknowledge that God uses walls and armies as a method of fulfilling his covenant for loyalty towards his people. And yet we have a great, powerful military. Phenomenal military men and women who serve our country. Men that have perished before us, men and women that have laid their lives down for us, and many ahead of us that will do the same in the future. We're a blessed nation in many ways. With verse 13. Mark ye well her bulwarks. Consider her palaces, that ye may tell it to the generation fallen. The inspection of the structures continue with a purpose. It's to reveal the generations that follow. The worshipers have become so familiar with the defense of Jerusalem that they're literally able to tell the next generation. They're able to tell their children about their city's might. Us as Americans, we should be able to tell our children of the might of our great country. But you know one thing that we can tell really well? Like this morning, I can live through and vividly imagine the terror attacks of September 11th. I can envision Desert Storm. I can go through Iraqi freedom, and we can just visualize that. The tail end of Vietnam, I can remember parts of my cousin going to the Marine Corps, and you think about this, you just go, coronavirus, we will tell of coronaviruses. Ruth's niece, for a great example. She's supposed to graduate college in May, and she's supposed to get married at the end of May. That's all been canceled. And they're trying to figure out what to do now. And even here, we have a bridal shower supposed to be coming up in a couple weeks. Canceled. And you go, life is on hold right now, but we need to remember that when we first look at putting stock in human strength, and Jerusalem's strength is figuratively, but we're looking at the representation of God and the protection and care. And ultimately, Israel fails to communicate to the next generation of the importance of keeping his side and his covenants. We, as a generation gone by, have miserably failed at sharing Jesus like we could have. We've miserably failed. And you go, but people are saved. Yeah, I agree. People are saved. People have been saved. But churches have done a horrible job. And you go, how can that be? We still have Vacation Bible School. We do. We still have Awana. We do. We still have youth group. We do. But as a whole, churches have miserably failed at sharing the gospel. And here's why. Isn't social media so easy to share without sharing? Isn't social media so easy to give an opinion without giving an opinion? And we look at times gone by, even electronic-wise. Yes, I use an iPad, and I go through. But when I look at my iPad and I go through, I cannot take the notes like I do in my Bible. I can't underline, I can't reference, I can't go back. I can't physically go through and pour my heart out like I can. And we need to teach our kids to do that. Because guess what happens if we remove one generation in the middle of it all? The next generation is gone. It only takes one generation and 2 generations later, then the whole history of church is over. Think about that. If we take one generation out, 2 generations later is gone. And you go, if you take one out, 2 generations gone. Yeah, so if we take out a generation, the next generation immediately follow grandma and grandpa will still be on. But the generation after that is usually typically over. And I'm not talking about church, I'm talking about history, I'm talking about teaching in general, I'm talking about life. Think of it this way. How many knows people that can produce vegetables out of their garden? That's a lost art. A lost art. And you think about that and you go, no, people don't can. No, people don't can like they used to. It's easy, actually it's cheaper to go buy it off a store shelf than to physically grow it and can it. You go, how that's so? It really, if you add it up. But you're looking at nutritional values completely different. But canning food is a lost art. It is. Because generationally we've been taught just to go to the store. Stocking up and keeping a pantry at home is a lost art. Why? Because we don't plan meals on anymore. We don't think that we need to look at the next 2 weeks and figure out what we're going to eat each day and go buy accordingly to what we're going to eat. And instead we just stop at Dollar General on the way home and grab something to throw in the microwave. We've significantly changed how we live. But when we look at failing to communicate to the next generation is an important sign of keeping the covenant. Kings lead people into idolatry. And you know what I'm saying? Kings with a small k lead people into idolatry. The king will always lead to righteousness. And yet, the captivity, when God allowed foreign armies to conquer the land of the 12 tribes, the army of the king of Nebuchadnezzar will besiege Jerusalem, destroy the walls, and carry his people in exile. We really look and think, this past couple months for me has been interesting for church-wise. I mean, not just inside Hilltop, but going back to my old home church. You know, with my pastor passing away, his wife passed away this week, Mrs. Silk passed away end of the week. And you look and think, whenever I'm walking through Bible Baptist, and I walk through for the first time in a long time, and I'm walking through on a different level, and I'm just going, wow. I walked in the sanctuary whenever we did the funeral for Pastor Stokes, and I'm looking at it, and now they had not used the sanctuary. They were blessed with another side room that was adequate to use for their church, and that was the first time anybody had preached in the sanctuary in a couple of years. And I walk in there and go, wow, just look at the little stuff. And thinking of going, man, I remember when they painted that. Or you look at the baptism when you go up and go, man, remember the time my mom and dad got baptized, remember the time that I got baptized? And you look at the kids at day camp and kids camp, and you think of their Awana program that was gone by. You think of the Christian school that thrived with kids running up and down the hall, hearing laughter. And then you remember Sunday school. Kids excited to go to Sunday school. Not video run, not. It was taught from the Bible. And you look at the simple classrooms, they were active, the kids were inquisitive, and you see hearts thrilled. And yet the Bible was able to build character, because inside the Bible, the kids can find character-building stories. And yet when we memorize Bible verses, and many years later, we can still quote them. Think of the kids that made craft projects, that brightened the day of that parent or grandparent that they took them home to. And yet those small things became big things. And through the methods that we taught God's word then, the methods that we teach God's word now, I can still see some of the faces of the kids that at camp that come up out of the water. We had this huge water slide, and the kids were running through, and there's a little pool at the end, and they come up gasping for air and smiles on their face and covered with grass and mud, and run back through the other side and do it again. And yet today you see the kids that come through, and it's still today that you look as they're growing up. God still looks at humans as vessels. And what's our role as a vessel? A couple of years ago, I went to the pastor's conference, and the title of the conference was very well thought. It's called Broken Vessels. And what it was referring to was the pastors that were broken. And it was that they were a vessel that was broken, spiritually, physically, mentally. And you go through and you think the preaching was intentionally to heal. And you look at churches today and you think of the broken vessels inside the churches. Or better yet, the broken vessels that were inside the church that no longer goes anywhere. Look at verse 14. For this God is our God forever and ever. He will be our guide even unto death. The song revolves on a final note of confidence regarding our God. In verse 13, the readers are instructed to pass their knowledge of God, pass his ways to their offspring. But the knowledge of God is not the only thing moving in the future. God himself goes with his people. The only one who will be our guide is God. From the moment that we're saved, we need to be focusing on that task ahead of us and the ability to serve. Our source of protection, our source of safety will lead us through our entire lives. If we let him. Do you understand? If we let him. And we have assurance that when we reach to the end of our days unto death, God will still be right there through all eternity. Now I look and think this morning, we're looking at Facebook and was doing some analysis, statistical analysis afterwards this afternoon, and to see how we could do better. And I'm waiting to see, was anybody saved off Facebook? And the reality of it is, can we be a blessing? Yes. Has the face of churches changed? Yes. Has the face of our country changed? Yes. Has God changed? Not one bit. Because he was the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And we look, as God leads us and protects us, we want to look at this song of celebrating the city walls may seem out of place for a modern reader. But for the Israelites, the structural, tangible wall is an indication of God's role and God's presence. He was their king, the one who promised to lead and protect them. But you know what? Their king is our king. The promise to lead and protect us. And the psalm would have presented a challenge to the worshipers during the time of his Babylonian exile. But the reality of Jerusalem's destruction was starkly contrast with the message. The tension. You want to hear tension? Look at America today. And yet, we consider again King Solomon's prayer of dedication to this newly built temple. He anticipated the possibility that Israel would rebel against God to be cast into exile as a result. Solomon implored God that if his people would deeply repent of their sins and turn their hearts back to him, then he would hear them. He was begging them. He was asking them to forgive them, to restore them. That's 2 Chronicles 6 chapter. But the irony of it all is that here we are, 2,500 years later from the time this temple was built, still begging, asking for forgiveness, asking for restoration. And yet Solomon himself ended up with much less wise, and he allowed foreign stuff to happen, and it just went sideways. But God continued to be their king. God continued to be their fortress. Even after the city walls were demolished by a foreign army, the subsequent exile challenged Israel's confidence in their God. No matter what's thrown at the United States of America, it can challenge your confidence in God. I said this morning with 9/11, most certainly challenged our confidence with God. Many, many, many people turn to God. Here we are with a significant virus. Many, many, many people need to turn to God. But when we look at God, he will prove his sovereign loyalty to his people again and again. He displayed his loyalty even through their disloyalty. It resulted in their own demise. And you look at our country and just think of one thing that pops out of my head immediately when I see disloyalty is the amount of abortions that happen in our country. You want to see disloyalty? Look at abortions. And yet we still ask ourselves, why should we be a blessed nation? And today we serve our Lord Jesus, who expressed his loyalty to us through his death and resurrection. We can be confident of this: God's good role in God's love for us. It's a task to pass on to the next generation a love and a message to others. And that's the greatest show of loyalty to him that we can offer, is to continue to show. But yet, here we are, our strong and mighty King. Our strong and mighty King, tangible in many ways, has truly protected us through the years. And we need to thank him for governing us with his holiness, with his righteousness. And may everything we do, may everything that we think and say be an expression of our love to him. Why? Because he loved us first. And we just need to beg that king, pray for that king, and ask for God's protection and expression of his love in this country again. Let's pray. Lord, we know you sit on the throne today. We know you are the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. We know you've given us your Son, Jesus, to come and die on a cross and shed his blood for the remission of our sins. We know, Lord, that we can never gain heaven without you. You've paid the price for us. Lord, we have a country that sometimes just flat out forgets about you. And continually you reveal yourself. You show your forgiveness. You show your might, your power, your strength. You show us your love. But Lord, as we are here now in a country of folks that are in fear of what can happen, physical, health, mental, Lord, there's people that are really concerned. And I just implore you, Lord, beg you, Lord, those that are sick, that you heal. Let them find a cure. And Lord, just let us as a country reunite with you. Let us come to you in great ways. This week, Lord, I just pray that you keep us safe. You use us every day, Lord. That we can be a blessing to those around us, that we can share your Son like we've never been able to. But Lord, we're just praying for health. You keep us safe. Lord, the doctors, the nurses, the scientists, you give them the wisdom and discernment they need. Let us be a blessing to them. We just pray this in your holy and most precious name. Amen. Have a good week. It's going to be an interesting week, I'm sure. But let me just say this. Give God the glory through it all. Always remember that.